tutorials. I've been doing tutorials. I've been in there in the weeds, trying to learn, trying to make some stuff. Lately, it's been Unreal tutorials and Unity tutorials, where in Unreal, I've been trying to make a visual novel-esque system, as well as just basic stuff like, putting the character in and making him move and trying to take over the third-person character, trying to mutate it into my own guy. And it's been difficult. I don't know. Going through these tutorials for Unreal has been a little bit more challenging than I kind of figured it would be. But, it's slowly coming along, because I'm also doing some Unity stuff right now in preparation for GMTK Jam 2023. I'm really excited about that. And in preparation, I'm just in Unity making some stuff just for general knowledge, and I'm trying to work with scriptable objects more. But I'm making a modular combat system, so I've been following tutorials on that. And it just got me thinking more about these and how I approach them, and how tough it is to learn from them, because it's annoying. It's really annoying most of the time to be learning from these things. And I don't know the best way to go about learning from them, if I'm being honest. I find that there is 3 ways this can go about typically. There is small tutorials. So, they range from anywhere from 1 minute to 10-ish minutes, 12, 15, whatever minutes. And this for most people is a small tutorial. Okay, you make a collectible. I want to do it quickly. There's a lot for Blender from, I think, Royal Skies something. His username, he does 1 minute long tutorials, and they're great, really helpful. They really never dig into setting up actual core principles that you want to follow, but it is usually just how do I do this? Thank you. And then you forget. You basically just keep coming back. Maybe that's a really clever way to do business. Regardless, so there's these small ones. And then you get the larger ones, the hour-long, perhaps the 2-hour-long tutorials, where it is just this really long thing. It's usually someone just recording their screen and then just going at it. And those can be good. They're usually set up to be a little bit more complex, or set up to explain things better. This can work out pretty well for people who are willing to put in, but it really is dependent on the person doing the tutorial. If they're not good at explaining things, if they aren't really explaining things, that sucks, because if you're going to be putting in all this effort, or all this time, I guess, time and effort, then you want it to lock in a little bit more than just these small ones. And then there's the third one, which is kind of a mixture of the two, and it's splitting a big thing up into a part series. These are probably the most approachable. The thing I used to learn Unity was a 6 to 10 hour long series split into 10-minute segments, just because they know hey, 10 minutes is probably the best for people learning or whatever. And I totally agree. It works really well. But you find these things. Now, the thing is, I've already highlighted the potential problem with the small ones being you aren't remembering the stuff. It's not teaching core elements. You tend to forget, or it just goes away. For then the longer form stuff, one of the big problems with it is you reaching a point where you can no longer follow, where something didn't work, you put something in wrong. Maybe it's an older version. I had this a little bit ago. I was following along a tutorial, but I had the wrong version, and some things had been updated that had now made things in the tutorial not work. And this is when I was maybe 40 minutes into the 2-hour long, 3-part series. So that was really frustrating. And these moments where something no longer works, you can't follow along anymore, kill the motivation, totally just wreck it. It's like a spiral, because it's this isn't working. Why is this working? Usually in the beginning, if you're a beginner or whatever, you don't know why things aren't really working. You can't troubleshoot these things. So then you're really lost. Maybe you think to yourself, I'll move on. Maybe I can just finish it without this part that's not working. That usually isn't the case. You kind of need all these systems to work. So that's a huge bummer, and just kind of kills tutorial progression in my eyes. It throws it down a well where you can't see it anymore. Anyway, so I'm following tutorials lately, and I've just been kind of thinking about, these things. I mentioned before, the best one I've done is the big Unity Udemy course I had. It really was able to actually teach me this stuff, but it does lead to something that not a lot of people want to do, me included. I don't want to do this, but the more I'm going ahead, the more I realize this is probably what I have to do. And the thing is, you got to learn all the basics and how things are working. And like the simple stuff, really. This original Udemy tutorial for Unity, blah, blah. This tutorial really went through the first stuff, the stuff that I thought I knew, and maybe a lot of stuff I did know, but just like breaking down all the simple stuff. Now that I'm jumping back into Unreal, and I'm just trying to jump straight into like these bigger tutorial series, this stuff that I don't know how to use, components and widgets and blackboards. I never used this stuff before. And now I'm looking at it and I'm going along, but when I reach a hiccup, I really, it falls apart. Where versus tutorials I'm doing in Unity, I can kind of dance with them a little bit. I can kind of know what they're doing and maybe set up a different thing, or be able to troubleshoot if it's not working, or do something else that more aligns with the thing I'm trying to make. And that's like, oh my gosh, that's so powerful. Sadly, that took maybe a year of previous learning of not being able to make what I want and banging my head against the wall and getting really anxious just because things weren't working. I think I don't know if it was in the past or it was moving forward, but I mentioned like things kind of get fun when you're good at them. So when you're not good at them, they're not very fun. And you see this a lot with beginner devs or hobbyist devs. They're going in the original, like the initial stuff they're making. It's really frustrating to them. But as they move forward, it gets fun and it gets creative. And I've even had this with my own thing. Like I've done like VFX, and I'll make VFX in Unreal recently. I'm going through Niagara system. And as I'm going through and getting better at it, I'm like now actually having fun as opposed to doing it because I really want to learn these things. It's kind of funny. It's like anyone slightly more advanced or intermediate could look at all this and you go like, yeah, yes, this is like baby's first game dev, is that you actually survive in the industry or get better or whatever. All this being said, I'm still not following my own advice most of the time, because it's like, you should just stop and learn what components do in Unreal. You should stop and learn how to use scriptable objects properly in Unity. But instead, I'll just go like, I want to make a visual novel system. Let's go. And, really struggle the rest of the way. Just climbing through mud the entire way. Yeah. I am making cool stuff, though. I've been in Unreal a lot. Recently, I haven't really been able to be in Unity. And it's kind of funny. I've jumped back in Unity for just some getting ready for Game Jam. And it feels kind of like home. Not going to lie, it feels really nice. And one thing that has me very pleased and very happy is originally, when I left Unity for a long time, I actually really forgot a lot of coding. I forgot how C# stuff works and names for things. And it was really, is demoralizing the word? It was really sad. It made me really sad and frustrated, because it was like, I left for a while and now I'm back and now I don't know how to do this stuff and I have to like relearn it before I can just kind of get back into it. Where when you get back into something, you kind of just want to get back into something. So that sucked. I was able to, relearn it to an extent and get back into it. And now recently, just jumping back into it, it's sticking. And I'm like, oh, great. This does feel like I can leave Unity for a while and come back to it when I want to for a jam or something, and just kind of use it. That's really nice to see. Because for this, I'm really looking into a modular combat system. I think for a while, I've been really all over the place with what I'm learning and what I want to learn and what I'm making and the tutorials I'm following. And lately, I've just been like, I want to focus. I want to focus on low poly, Mega Man Legends looking stuff. And I want to focus on third-person combat. Like, that's something that I've always really wanted to make. Even as like a kid, that's like the kind of games I loved and wanted to make. So I want to make something like that. And I'm finally kind of going about, like, how do people make combat and stuff? And third-person combat is really difficult and really complex. And maybe people don't know this, but I think that's why, like, tutorial-wise, there isn't as much, as because it's really, weird. But there's also not like a good one way or two ways to do it. It's kind of all over the place. So I'm looking at like different tutorials and seeing how they do it. I got the scriptable object system going on with Unity where I can combo attacks together and stuff. And that's working out. And I am liking that. Yes. I think another thing that's interesting to go into and learn is enemy AI, of course. Like that's going to be a weird thing in a weird system. the system I'm using in Unity is a state machine system where I'm using the animator to control the states in which the enemies will do and the way they think, quote unquote. And doing that has been like, oh, this isn't horrible. I haven't done it in Unreal. I assume a similar system can be done. If it can, I would totally use it. Just a state machine AI. Man, I feel like anyone who, is intermediate would be like, yeah, that's all that stuff's there and it's really easy. So yeah, that's the thing. But so I'm going through and I'm learning that stuff and it's been pretty good. Like I mentioned earlier with Unity tutorials, I've been kind of able to dance with them a bit and understand what's going on and be able to make things and move stuff around and customize them in a way, which is fantastic. I haven't really been in that position because I don't know. I usually get to a point where like I'm good enough and then I'll like move on or something. So getting actually like better at a skill doesn't happen too often. And it's hard to do. And I'm just going to say this, like coding, I think is really, really tough skill. Or at least for me, it's super tough. I mean, for other people, it might just like click. But, I know there's a lot of really, really smart people that I know that use coding in really interesting ways that you see it. And it's like, yeah, how? But that being said, like people probably think that about me too sometimes as well. So, it's all where you are in your own learning journey or whatever. I do find what's funny about tutorials is the comment sections for these things. It's such this wide range of what people are saying or asking or whatever. So you have like a good tutorial and people will typically go, oh, this is the best. Like, thank you. You saved my entire life. You saved my marriage. Like, this is awesome. And then you have, in amongst all these praising comments, you'll have a comment that's like, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do this? That's usually where I am. And I look for those ones because, you might be running the same problem. So if you see like, I don't know, and then you look in the reply section, it might be the guy replying. With those, it's kind of funny though, because if someone's like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what happened here, it's kind of hard to help them because usually you need pictures or maybe footage or even the file to be like, you misspelt that, or you hooked that node up wrong, or why is this node here? But if someone's just like, I don't know, and then it's like, I don't know, try this. It's pretty funny to see. Most of those go unanswered. But it is just kind of funny, this dichotomy. Is that the right word? This difference of like, this is the best thing ever versus I'm dying, help. Because it's just like polar opposites. I don't know what a middle ground would look like. I guess sometimes people will, this is another comment you'll get on those, which is like, this is great, but this doesn't work very well for the thing. You should maybe do it like this instead. And then they'll offer like actual code stuff. What I find kind of funny is when you see someone who you deem maybe really smart or really big in the YouTube space in tutorials, YouTube comments. So I remember a while ago, I saw Danny, when it was Danny, in a comment for like, physic object moving thing. So you'd be going and then you look in the comments and it's like, oh, this really helped. And it's just like, oh, he's just one of the people in this comment section. But they're like a really big, smart person. But that's just like the thing about, like game dev YouTubers is oftentimes they not portray themselves necessarily, but they seem really, really, really smart. And that's because, I think most of the time they do just show, like they'll skip over all the struggles. Because obviously as well, like for the content, you kind of don't want to see the struggles. And I've been, tempted to do this a lot too. And I do this a lot as well, where I won't show like, it took me way too long to figure out this. Because I don't know, I guess no one just wants to see you sitting in a chair, sad at your computer. But anyway, yeah. So the comments are kind of funny, kind of sad, sometimes helpful. But if you're going to learn about dev from like reading and stuff, it's got to be in the forums. It's got to be those forum posts. It's got to be questions people have on actual like pages. You really can't, do as much in the comment section because the forums, those go hard. I mentioned the Unity forums earlier, and that is the thing. I find myself though, oftentimes seeing that the solutions, at least the solutions that I'm looking for, are like too complicated. Where it's like, how do I make the I don't know, rigid body move, jumping, whatever. How do I add jumping? Oh, it's this and this. And then he puts like this big long thing. Maybe you got an array in there, put a for each loop. And it's like, is there just like a add force to go up? And that being said, the simple solutions tend to break this stuff a lot more. Like, no, you shouldn't just add force to jump. I don't think you should have a full on system because then it'll work better. You get that good old Mario jump. Learning through tutorials is a thing and it works. It totally works. I haven't specifically found like, I don't know, it feels like you're kind of not learning properly. So I would say like, if you are a person, like I mentioned, Danny, it seems like he's mostly self-taught. I think, he did coding or something, but, like if you're a person like me, I couldn't learn from tutorials at all when I first started. I had to go to school and spend a lot of money so I could learn how to do that. And now I can kind of do it. The problem is, obviously, all this stuff takes a really long time. I think these tutorials almost put you in this mindset that it's easy, that it can be easy, that it can be quick as well, especially if you're following these quick ones. And I don't know, it makes it seem like it's not as hard as it is. Maybe, I don't know, because it is hard. It's super hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I think devlogs are way worse for that feeling than tutorials, because at least tutorials you are learning. A classroom setting or an online course, I think can also be like the best in a sense of you don't get this feeling that maybe it should be easy and it's not. Like, obviously a classroom, depending on the classroom, people are actually helping you. Udemy course, like the one I follow, this is my only experience with an actual online course like that. There was a sense of community. There was people, they had like a messenger thing, a commenter thing where people could comment like issues they were having or problems they were having. And you could actually see this. They had the modules split up. The way to do tutorials, I think actually, hold on, maybe I figured it out. Not really, but I remember this, and I think this is the best way you can do it, although it's quite hard and it can also be frustrating. It's like the other things, not so simple, but you do a tutorial, right? You're going to a tutorial. When you get to a point where it's like, we're going to start doing, this, or maybe they're doing the theory or whatever. If you can stop the tutorial, pause the tutorial, the course, whatever, and then try to do that next bit on your own. The one tutorial, the one Udemy course that I listened to, they did that. They implemented that where it's like, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be moving this. They'll teach you some basic stuff. This is how you do this vector transform to move a block over here, get component, and then it's like, okay, now we want to make it move vertically instead of horizontally. Try to make it move vertically instead of horizontally. If you get that, it feels like, and you are actually using what you're learning. And now you have to honestly think critically about it. Because a lot of these tutorials, you're just kind of copying it down. You're just kind of following along. But if then they flip it and be like, okay, we're going to basically be doing something similar. Do you think you can do it? And if you can, wow, that feels really good. Now I had a lot of caveats of like, it depends on blah, 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 because it really does. Like in these last couple tutorials I've been looking at for the combat system, it was like that, where the person speaking was good enough that you could kind of pause it and perhaps kind of go on ahead a little bit. There is also the case of how much do I know? I knew more already about Unity coding, so I was able to kind of move on. Of course, the Udemy course I mentioned did it all the time, and it was really good. One of the instructors specifically in that course is the best guy ever. And but for something like this Unreal tutorials I was looking at for the visual novel stuff, it wasn't really good at doing that at all. This typically happens when it's always like new stuff. So in the visual script thing, it was never a point where it's like, okay, we've now done this. We're going to do something similar. Can you go do it? It was always like, okay, here's this new thing you've never done before. And then here's this new thing that we've never done before. And then here's this new thing we've never done before. And then here's this new thing we've never done before. Eventually it started like going back at things, and you can, maybe figure it out yourself. But yeah, the case with that though, I say figure it out yourself. Typically, if you are like trying to figure out areas or trying to do parts of it yourself by challenging yourself, you'll probably just, start like Googling things. So you're in one tutorial, and then to finish the tutorial or to challenge yourself on the tutorial, you will start like Googling how to basically do certain things for it. Does that make sense? Basically, like, but I'm just saying that's good. Because that is actually how most people work, is like constantly Googling, at least for coders, just constantly Googling stuff, like all the time. So if it's like, okay, you're going to challenge yourself to go do this part yourself, it's not a bad thing to maybe not like Google the full solution, but if you're supposed to move something vertically, but you forget how to even move something at all, okay, how do I move something? And then you move it and you're like, okay, and then I can put in just on the y-axis or the z-axis or whatever axis and add a float to that, a variable to that. And then it moves, and then you're like, oh, okay. Because that's how they do it. Tutorials or looking up forum posts in tutorials. Yes. How many times do you think I've said tutorial in this? I'm thinking of potentially, it would be funny to rank community support, rank tutorials or whatever. I think you might have to separate it even further to be like ranking forums and ranking YouTube tutorials as opposed to just all of them batch, because those hit two very different like learning niches. It's kind of interesting if that's a thing. But so like, for instance, the Unity forums versus the Unreal forums, right? I'd put Unity S rank, Unreal forum for, I don't know, B, put it a B rank. But if it's like, video tutorials for Unreal, I'd maybe put them both in A or something. I don't know. Maybe Unity a little lower than Unreal's, because since Unreal's got the blueprint stuff, it's way more beginner friendly. But I don't know. I'm wanting to do some stuff in RPG Maker leading up. So where would RPG Maker go? I know it has a really long history, and it has a lot more like people talking amongst each other and setting up plugins and things. So it really is depending on how I'd put it, but heck, maybe go in S rank, maybe go in A rank, who knows. The only other engine I've used, I say engine in quotations, GB Studio. Where would you put GB Studio? I'd put it at, there's not much to it. I followed one tutorial series and I was able to make the stuff I needed to make. As far as community support, maybe you're just looking at Reddit and stuff. But it's so small. Put it in small tier, tiny little boy tier. I know like the other ones that would actually be able to, be up here would be, Godot. The other engines I don't remember at all. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I totally just drawing a blank on all the engines. Because there's one other one other than Godot, like Unity, Godot, Unreal, and then there's one other. I've heard potentially really good things about Godot recently. It kind of interests me, but the thought of like restarting again, and I'm in Unreal now, and that's it's boggling my mind. So it's like starting again, bro. And I'm trying to learn C#. It's like I just kind of have to stick with these smaller ones I know. I don't know. Pico 8. I put Pico 8 somewhere. I put Pico 8 in S because you can take people's games and look at their codes just in the system. Triple S tier. You can steal content as the community support goes. I don't know. B again, perhaps. C. I was only in there for a little bit. I don't think there's a lot of creators, but they do have some good creators in the YouTube space at least. So it's not nothing. Yeah, I don't know. It's super personal opinion-y. It's like it's not even subjective at all. Wait, is subjective opinion? Sheesh. I don't even know, man. But that would be funny to do that anyway. But yeah, I am working on stuff, and it feels good to work on stuff again, and it feels really good to work up to GMTK 2023, because that is what I'm doing. I'm just like doing Unity tutorials so that I'm able to be smarter during the jam, because it would really suck if I'm doing the jam and I totally forget how to code and stuff, and that would really stink. And I'm doing it solo, because the last maybe 2 jams I did with people, and I like doing it with people, but for me, these jams are marathons. They really are. Like, I personally treat it like I would a physical sport marathon thing, where it's totally a self-challenge. I work up to them. So I guess I'm just going to end it there. I didn't think I would be making something so long that I'd have to like Frankenstein around, but I know I have to like cut content and do stuff, but I just really wanted to make another SuitNtalk. So I have to go back to my day job.